The first thing Lieutenant Mark Wilson noticed was the unnatural silence. He had just returned from a routine mission when his comms flickered to life. "We need you back here, now, Lieutenant." He felt a strange urgency in the voice of his superior officer. The galaxy was at war, and that meant every mission mattered. But what Mark didn't expect was to find a war zone in the middle of the human research facility. When he arrived at the facility, the damage was extensive. Buildings were in ruins, and smoke billowed from several areas. The sounds of distant explosions could still be heard, but there was a sense of eerie calm where he stood. A large crowd of scientists and military personnel were gathered near the entrance, speaking in hushed tones. Mark's eyes narrowed when he saw the figure at the center of it all, a tall, muscular man in a dark torn suit, surrounded by blinking machinery. His face was expressionless, but his hands trembled slightly as they gripped a damaged alien device. As Mark moved closer, he could hear snippets of conversation. One of the scientists whispered, "It's a miracle she survived." Mark's curiosity grew. He had heard of the alien girl, but he had never seen her until now. She was supposed to be a part of a top-secret experiment, but no one knew what had truly happened during the attack. The woman was said to be the key to their survival, yet no one expected such a dramatic twist in the story. Mark's eyes darted around as he tried to make sense of the situation. The girl had been left for dead in the chaos of the attack, and the team of scientists had done everything they could to save her. The girl's body had been entirely destroyed, and now she lay in pieces. But the most shocking part of all, her head, her only remaining part, still held a faint trace of life. Her face was pale, her eyes wide open, almost as though she was waiting for something, perhaps for someone to give her hope again. "I can't believe she's still alive," one of the scientists muttered, barely audible, as he passed by Mark. The words made Mark pause. The alien girl had been lying in a critical state, the only part of her body that was intact being her head. How was it possible that she had managed to survive this long? The man working on the alien technology was none other than Dr. Henry Calvert, a renowned engineer known for his incredible skills in mechanics and cybernetics. He had been tasked with rebuilding the girl, but no one knew how he would do it. Mark could tell that Dr. Calvert was on the verge of something big, but he had no idea what that something was. As Mark approached him, Dr. Calvert didn't look up immediately. He was focused on the machinery that had been hastily set up to connect the girl's head to a series of cables and wires. Dr. Calvert finally glanced up at Mark, his tired eyes betraying the exhaustion of someone who had been working around the clock. "She's lost everything," he said quietly, his voice breaking through the tension. "Her body, her mind of everything. But I've found a way to bring her back." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. The words hung in the air, but Mark couldn't process them at first. Was this truly possible? Could a human be brought back from near total destruction? Mark wasn't sure, but the sense of responsibility was growing heavier. He couldn't ignore the potential consequences of tampering with alien technology. Without hesitation, Dr. Calvert continued, "We're trying something unprecedented. If it works, she'd be reborn not as the same being, but something different, a being that could change everything." Mark stood frozen, processing the implications. The girl had been through hell and back, and now they were about to rebuild her quite literally. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than anyone was willing to admit. The room fell silent again. The rest of the team exchanged nervous glances as they watched Mark, unsure if he understood the gravity of what was about to happen. Mark wanted to speak, to question the wisdom of attempting such a feat, but the words caught in his throat. He was no stranger to alien encounters. But this was different. This was no ordinary alien. She had lost everything, yet somehow, she was about to get a second chance at life. What did that mean for the war, and what did it mean for humanity? The mechanic and his team were about to make history, but at what cost? Only time would reveal. The answer. Mark could only watch as the project moved forward, the tension thick in the air, the fate of an entire galaxy hanging on the next decision. The human race had no idea what they were about to unleash. A new creation, born of tragedy, poised to change everything. The air inside the laboratory felt thick with anticipation. Mark could barely breathe as he watched Dr. Calvert and his team prepare the final phase of the operation. The alien girl's head was carefully positioned inside a transparent containment chamber, connected to a network of cables and devices. Every piece of machinery hummed with purpose, lights flickering as the team ran last-minute diagnostics. The girl's lifeless eyes stared forward, and for a moment, Mark wondered if there was anything left of her in that fragile form. Had she truly survived the attack, or was this just a shell that they hoped to bring back to life? No one could answer that, but the silence told Mark more than words ever could. "Start the sequence." Dr. Calvert's voice broke through the stillness. His tone was filled with resolve, yet Mark could hear the hint of uncertainty lurking beneath. Mark watched as Dr. Calvert pressed a series of buttons on the control panel, initiating the process. The room filled with a low hum, and the containment chamber began to glow, the liquid inside turning a soft blue as it activated. For a moment, nothing happened. Mark's heart raced as he stared at the girl's head, wondering what this would mean. For her, and for everyone involved. What if the technology they were using was too dangerous? What if they were playing with forces they couldn't control? "We're almost there," Dr. Calvert said, his voice steady but filled with a tension Mark couldn't ignore. "This will work. It has to work." The machine continued its work, calibrating the signals, infusing the alien technology into the girl's head, and preparing her for the next phase of her existence. Dr. Calvert's hands flew across the console, adjusting settings, ensuring that everything was proceeding according to the plan. Mark could feel his mind racing, a swirl of doubt and hope fighting for control. Was this the right decision? Should they be doing this? But the girl was their only hope now, and there was no turning back. Mark couldn't tear his eyes away from the scene unfolding before him. His mind tried to make sense of the complexity of the technology they were using. How could one man, one engineer, be able to harness such power? The thought of an alien being, once lost and helpless, coming back to life in a new form, struck Mark as both incredible and terrifying. He couldn't ignore the feeling that they were about to change everything. The hum in the room grew louder, and the lights flickered, casting an eerie glow on the scene. The alien girl's body began to move, her fingers twitching ever so slightly. The moment was electric, and Mark's pulse quickened. Her eyes fluttered, then opened, revealing a faint trace of recognition in her gaze. It was as if she could see everything but was trapped in a state of limbo. Mark stepped forward cautiously, unsure of what to say or do. The girl's head turned ever so slightly, and her lips parted, though no sound emerged. Mark wasn't sure whether to be relieved or more frightened. He had seen the horrors of war, the devastation of entire worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this moment, witnessing the first steps of a rebirth that could change everything. The air was thick with tension as Dr. Calvert leaned in, inspecting the girl's condition. "It's working," he muttered, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. "Her neural pathways are stabilizing. We've done it." But Mark wasn't so sure. He could see the changes in her, but was it truly her? Or was this just a new entity, a creature formed from the wreckage of her former self? Mark's instinct screamed that something wasn't right, but the room was filled with too much hope to voice those concerns aloud. The girl's eyes focused on Mark, and for a moment, he felt a strange connection. It was as though she recognized him, perhaps from the time she had spent before the attack. Her pupils dilated as she looked at him, and for the first time he saw something more than just the blank stare of someone lost. There was life in her eyes. Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he saw her lips move again, this time forming words. Where am I?" Her voice was soft and mechanical, as though it hadn't fully adjusted to her new body, but it was a voice nonetheless. Mark stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Dr. Calvert's face lit up with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. "You're here," he said, his voice shaking. "You're back." The girl's gaze shifted from Mark to Dr. Calvert, and her expression softened. "I remember you," she whispered. "You saved me." Mark felt a lump form in his throat. In that moment, he realized just how fragile hope could be. The girl wasn't just a project, an experiment, or a lost cause. She was something more, something worth saving. And as the girl slowly began to rise, Mark understood that they had just begun a journey that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The girl's movements were slow but deliberate as she began to adjust to her new surroundings. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the lab, the machinery, and the people around her. Mark stood nearby, his mind still racing to comprehend the reality of the situation. This was no ordinary experiment, no simple reconstruction. This was something unprecedented, a transformation that could change the course of humanity itself. Her fingers twitched again, and she looked at them with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Mark noticed how her alien features were now enhanced. A blend of organic and mechanical, both alien and human. She was no longer just a girl. She was something else entirely. "How do you feel?" Dr. Calvert asked cautiously, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. He had spent days ensuring every part of this experiment was perfect, but now that it was finally coming to life, he was unsure what to expect. Would the girl be the same as before? Or had this process changed her in ways they couldn't anticipate? The girl's eyes shifted from Dr. Calvert to Mark. There was something about her gaze that made Mark uneasy. It wasn't fear or confusion, but something deeper. It was as if she was trying to understand who she was, what she had become, and whether she still had a place in the world she had once known. "I don't know," she answered softly, her voice wavering. "I can't remember much, just pieces." She paused as if searching for the right words. "Everything is different." Mark took a step forward, his curiosity piqued. "Can you remember your name?" he asked gently. He didn't know why he asked the question, perhaps because he was hoping to see a glimpse of the person she had been before the attack. The girl's eyes narrowed in concentration, as if she was reaching deep inside herself for an answer. It took a moment before she spoke again. "I think my name was Tessa," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The name hung in the air like a fleeting memory. Tessa. Mark didn't know whether it was real or just a product of the mind's attempt to rebuild itself. But it was something, and in that moment, it felt important. Dr. Calvert nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. "Tessa," he repeated softly, almost as if confirming her identity. "It's good to have you back." But there was something in Tessa's expression that Mark couldn't ignore. A flicker of doubt. It was subtle, but it was there, hidden beneath the surface. As if she knew something wasn't quite right, even though she couldn't put her finger on it. She lifted her hand slowly, touching the edge of the containment chamber as though it were the first time she had ever felt something solid. Her fingers grazed the cool surface, and her eyes followed the path of her touch. The movement seemed mechanical, yet oddly graceful. She was still learning, adjusting to the new body that had been forced upon her. Tessa's voice broke the silence. "What am I now?" she asked, her gaze meeting Mark's. Her eyes were searching for answers, but Mark didn't have any to give. He didn't know if she was the same person she had been before the attack, or if this new body had changed her in ways they couldn't yet understand. Mark swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. "You're still you," he said, though even he wasn't sure of the truth of that statement. Tessa had been through something unimaginable. Her body had been destroyed, and yet, here she was, alive in a form that seemed both human and alien. Was she still the same person? Or had she become something else entirely? Dr. Calvert stepped forward, his voice firm yet compassionate. "We didn't just rebuild your body, Tessa," he said. "We gave you a new chance at life. You're part of something bigger now. You can help us change everything." Tessa's eyes softened slightly as she looked at Dr. Calvert, and for a moment, Mark saw a glimmer of something familiar in her expression: trust. She was still processing what had happened, still trying to understand the full extent of her transformation. But one thing was clear: she was alive, and that was more than anyone could have hoped for. Mark felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about saving Tessa. This was about saving the future. The technology they had used to bring her back had the potential to change the war, to change everything they knew about life, death, and the boundaries between species. But at what cost? Tessa took a deep breath, as though gathering her strength. She stood a little taller now, her mechanical body seeming to adjust to her movements. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do," she said quietly. "But I want to help. I want to understand." Mark nodded. "We'll figure it out together," he said. "You're not alone." As Mark looked at Tessa, he knew that the journey ahead would be difficult. The road was uncertain, filled with danger and questions that had no answers. But in that moment, Mark also knew one thing for sure. Tessa's rebirth was just the beginning. The facility felt different now. The air was heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Mark and Tessa stood in the middle of the laboratory, surrounded by machines that had once felt so familiar. Now they seemed foreign, like relics of an experiment that had gone too far. Tessa's new form was still an enigma. Her body was a blend of human and alien technology, a fusion that was meant to heal and rebuild. But Mark couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. She wasn't just a survivor. She was something entirely new, and no one could predict what that meant. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Mark asked quietly. He couldn't help but watch her as she examined her new body, her hands running over the mechanical parts that were now integrated into her limbs. She was no longer the fragile, dying girl from before. She was stronger, but there was a part of her that still felt lost. Tessa turned to him, her eyes filled with determination. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I have to find out. You said it yourself, I'm not alone anymore." Mark nodded, but the words didn't feel enough. He knew this was bigger than anything they had ever faced. Tessa had been given a second chance at life, but that came with a responsibility no one could have prepared her for. Mark didn't know how to guide her through this transformation. She had been a casualty of war, and now she was a soldier. But not in the way anyone had expected. Dr. Calvert had been right when he said that Tessa could help change everything. The technology used to rebuild her wasn't just advanced. It was revolutionary. If it worked for her, it could work for others. It could end the war, give humanity the upper hand. But Mark wasn't sure that was the right path to take. What if the technology was too powerful? What if it changed the course of history in ways they couldn't predict? Tessa seemed to sense his hesitation. "You're wondering if this is worth it," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I can see it in your eyes. But you don't have to worry. I know what I've become, and I can handle it." Mark looked at her, trying to understand what she meant. Was she telling the truth? Or was she only trying to convince herself? He had seen the toll that war took on people, but Tessa was different. She had experienced death, and now she was reborn. Could anyone truly be ready for that kind of change? "You're not just a weapon," Mark said softly. "You're still you. Don't lose sight of that." Tessa smiled, though there was sadness in her eyes. "I don't think I can forget what I've been through, but I can't turn back now. I have to move forward, for everyone who didn't make it." Mark felt the weight of her words. She wasn't just talking about herself. She was speaking for all those who had been lost in the conflict. She had become a symbol of survival, of resilience. But that also meant she carried the burden of everything that had come before. "We'll figure this out together," Mark said, offering her a reassuring smile. "We'll find a way to use your abilities for good, but we have to be careful. We don't know the full extent of what you're capable of." Tessa nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I understand. But I don't want to be a tool. I want to be something more than that." Mark's heart sank. He had never thought of her as a tool, but now that the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, he realized that the lines between humanity and technology were becoming blurred. The war they were fighting wasn't just a battle between two sides, it was a fight for what it meant to be human. And Tessa was at the center of it. "Let's go," Mark said, breaking the silence. "The war's not over yet, and we've got work to do." As they walked out of the laboratory, Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The future was uncertain, and they were walking into a world that was changing faster than anyone could keep up with. But with Tessa by his side, he felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a symbol of everything humanity had lost and everything it could still gain. The war wasn't over, but this new beginning might be the key to ending it once and for all. The day had come. The war that had ravaged the galaxy was nearing its climax, and the fate of humanity was resting in the hands of those who dared to challenge it. Mark stood at the edge of the battlefield, staring at the massive fleet in front of him. Ships of all sizes were preparing for the final assault, but amidst the chaos of war, there was a new hope. Tessa had become more than just an experiment. She had become humanity's last chance for survival. Mark could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. The stars above flickered like distant lights, unaware of the storm brewing below. His mind raced as he tried to come to terms with the decision that lay before him. Would they use Tessa's power to win the war? Or would they risk everything to protect the very thing that made her human? As the hours passed, Mark couldn't shake the image of Tessa. She had come so far, from the girl who had lost everything to the powerful force she was now. Her body, rebuilt with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of, was now a symbol of both strength and sacrifice. But as her abilities grew stronger, so did the danger. Could they control her? Could anyone? "Tessa," Mark called, his voice filled with both fear and admiration. She stepped toward him, her mechanical limbs clicking softly with each step. Her eyes, once filled with uncertainty, were now sharp and focused. She had made her decision. She was no longer just a victim of war, she was ready to fight. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "I know what I need to do." Mark nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of her words. The war was not just a fight for survival anymore. It had become a battle for the future of humanity itself. Tessa was no longer the girl who had been rebuilt. She was a weapon, but she was also a symbol of hope. The question was, could they live with the consequences of using her? "I don't want to be a weapon," Tessa continued, her gaze softening, "but I'm the only one who can end this. If we don't do something now, it will never stop. This war will keep going until everything is destroyed." Mark swallowed hard. The weight of the decision was crushing him. He had seen the horrors of war, the lives lost, the worlds destroyed. And now, with Tessa standing before him, the power to end it all was in their hands. But at what cost? "We've already lost so much," Mark said quietly. "But we have to ask ourselves, if we win this fight, what kind of world will we be left with? Will it still be worth living in? Or will we become the very thing we've been fighting against?" Tessa met his gaze, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of sorrow and resolve. "It will be worth it," she said softly. "But only if we do it right. If we lose our humanity in the process, then we've already lost." Mark was silent for a moment, reflecting on her words. He had always believed in the cause, in the fight for survival, but now he saw the deeper truth. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about preserving the very essence of who they were. Humanity's strength lay in its ability to adapt, to evolve, and to keep its soul intact, despite the horrors of the world. Tessa had become the embodiment of that strength. But she was also a reminder of the cost of war. The decision was clear, but it wasn't easy. Mark knew that whatever path they chose, there would be no going back. If they used Tessa to end the war, they would have to live with the consequences of her power. But if they didn't, the war would continue, and more lives would be lost. Tessa, Mark said, his voice steady now. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this. We fight as one. Tessa smiled, a faint but genuine smile. Thank you, she whispered. I'll make sure this isn't for nothing. Mark watched her turn toward the battlefield, her figure silhouetted against the stars. She was ready. And so was he. The final battle was about to begin, and they would face it together. The war had tested them all, but in the end, it was the human spirit that would triumph, no matter the cost. The ships began to move, and the thunderous roar of engines filled the air. Mark stood by Tessa, knowing that this was their last chance. The future of humanity rested on their shoulders, but they had one final choice to make: to win the war, and to do so without losing themselves in the process.